Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to Cyber Quick Strike for Monday, February 6th, 2023. From Reuters, the SEC reveals 2023, a lot of 20s in there, priorities and new agenda, including cybersecurity. Originally released in March of 2022, the new rule on cybersecurity risk management strategy, governance, and incident disclosure, which is given a number of RIN 3235-AN08 has reached the final rule stage. The rule will require companies subject to the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 to report material cybersecurity incidents within a certain time frame and make disclosures pertaining to the company's cybersecurity protocols and risk management strategies. The SEC is also considering a rule still in the proposed rule stage that would, quote, address registrant cybersecurity risk and related discourses, amendments to Regulation SP and Regulation SCI, and other enhancements related to cybersecurity and resiliency of certain commission registrants, end quote. So, Regulation SP requires broker dealers, registrant information advisors, and investment companies to adopt written policies and procedures that address administrative, technical, and physical safeguards for the protection of customer records and information. Additionally, Regulation SCI, System Compliance and Integrity, deals with the integrity and security of the technological infrastructure underpinning of U.S. securities markets and exchanges. Dark Reading reports that cybersecurity provider Hornet Security has launched two new tools, the QR Code Analyzer and Secure Links. Apparently, these are to combat growing cyber threats. These launches come in response to a rise in fake QR codes and the ongoing threat of phishing, which represents, according to the article, 40% of all cyber threats. I'd like to see the reference cited on that. Specifically, cyber criminals are using QR codes and emails to obtain confidential data. To counter this latest threat, Hornet Security is expanding its advanced threat protection and 365 total protection suite for Microsoft 365, which with the launch of its QR code analyzer. From their article, probably from their marketing materials, it says the unique technology determines whether QR codes link to malicious sites when scanned. The launch of Hornet Security Secure Links functionality will also help limit cyber attacks, especially ransomware attempts. And apparently, this new service runs all email links through a secure analyzer before enabling the recipient to safely open the link. So that sounds like that would be decent. Both of these technologies provide businesses and their employees with extra reassurance that their email communications are safe. Sounds like a decent tool, at least to check out. We've all heard and likely have tried ChatGPT by now. It certainly is a technology with promise, but may also introduce problems. Secure World presents some security concerns for business using ChatGPT. Of course, that's a tool that uses machine learning to understand written language and generate responses tailored to its inputs. It's a form of AI, artificial intelligence, known as natural language processing model, has been developed via analysis of massive banks of text-based data, which gives it the uncanny ability to understand the semantics and contents of the words and phrases it came across. Now, one concern is spreading misinformation with ChatGPT. These can be used to draft complex and convincing pieces of content. However, it's not able to fact check the information it collates rather in its written content. So meaning it can be easily used for spreading false and misleading information through social media and other platforms. That certainly has been a problem in the last few years. Another concern, according to the article, is new kinds of phishing emails and spam. ChatGPT has caused a stir due to its ability to come up with new and creative approaches to routine business processes, but this can be used for malicious purposes just as much for legitimate marketing activities. It can produce original content tailored to convince a detailed audience profile. Relatively inexperienced cyber criminals doing that could leverage it to steal sensitive information. So we may have to pivot from the standard, well, let's look for grammatical and spelling errors advice for finding and identifying phishing emails. And finally, they say that writing malware is a concern, just like fake news and content used for scams. It also has the potential to make life easier for people who want to write malware, malicious software. With coding becoming a more and more sought after skill in the modern workforce, and the dissemination of previously specialized information about coding, an emerging generation of new cybercriminals has been a concern for some time now. However, the ability to write malicious code still requires a certain degree of skill and understanding, at least up until recently. Now, this may change things. Now, the Hacker News reports new wave of ransomware attacks exploiting VMware bug to target ESXi servers. These attacks appear to exploit CVE 2021 21974, for which a patch has been available since February 23rd of 2021, according to CERT, the Computer Emergency Response Team. Now, VMware, in its own alert released at the time, excuse me, described the issue as an open SLP heap overflow vulnerability that could lead to the execution of arbitrary code. Quote here, a malicious actor residing within the same network segment as ESXi, who has access to port 427, may be able to trigger the heap overflow issue in OpenSLP service, resulting in remote code execution. So it sounds that if port 427 is open, whether it's the same segment or not, I mean, I don't know why it has to be the same segment. An attacker moving laterally could exploit this vulnerability. And also, as a side note, I really wish that journalists and pros would differentiate ports between TCP and UDP. It's likely going to default to TCP. I get that, but there is a difference. Anyway, I digress. Users are recommended to upgrade to the latest version of ESXi to mitigate potential threats, as well as restrict access to the OpenSLP service to trusted IP addresses and restrict port 427, presumably TCP. Tech Republic has an interesting write-up on data retention policies. I thought this was a good article to share. One of the risks that we see often is that organizations keeping data longer than it's needed. Two things drive need, basically, for that: regulatory requirements and business need. If neither exists, you're basically taking on risk, particularly if the information is confidential, without any reward. In other words, why do it? There's no business reason for it. It makes zero business sense. Well, the article notes a data retention policy, if you're not aware of what one is the first step in helping protect an organization's data and avoid financial, civil, and criminal penalties that increasingly accompany poor data management practices. It outlines what a data retention policy is and why it's important for your organization. Data retention is the preservation and usage of data for a predefined period called a data retention period. Makes sense. To satisfy business, technical, and legal requirements. Data retention ensures that data is easily recoverable in the case of an unforeseen disaster or circumstance that leads to data loss. It goes on to note that a data retention policy, therefore, is a policy or a principal course of action that ensures organizations store and dispose of data using a consistent approach. The policy specifies how long different types of data should be kept, as well as their storage locations and formats. And then the article goes on to talk about benefits for having a data retention policy. It details some of these, but it includes compliance, lower cost, cleaner and more accessible data, better disaster recovery, and consolidated record storage. And then the article closes with a few data retention tools. So looks like a pretty good resource if you're interested in that sort of stuff. And then finally, I've got the list for today, and this list comes from Dark Reading: What CISOs Can Do About Brand Impersonation Scam Sites. And for those of you who are not familiar, or just to refresh, I like taking a list from an article over the past few days that I've come across that seems interesting based on the title of the article. I have not read the list. This one, at first, I thought this was going to be an interesting article for the podcast, but when I started to read it and saw that it was a list, I thought, let's do this one as a list today. So let me go over to the list here. Going through after the preamble here, Number one, engage in trademark basics. A shocking number of companies don't go through the most basic actions of establishing and maintaining ownership of their brand's trademarks. The most fundamental step for hardening a brand from online attacks is to cover the basics like registering trademarks, logos, and unique product images. I guess that would kind of make sense, particularly if you have a very unique name or trademark for your business. Number two, take ownership of online landscape. Let's see what this means. The second sentence actually starts off by saying this means. This means not only picking up as many potentially relevant domain names as possible for the brand, but also setting up a footprint on all possible social media channels. So totally agree with that. Although you would think that there's only a limit that you can of the domains that you can get to squat, if you will, or to hold on to so that it doesn't impact your or be confused with your particular domain. And social media, I think also you have to come up with some sort of a limit here. I know that the article is saying that, okay, just because, for example, we don't do TikTok doesn't mean that we have to have a TikTok or that we shouldn't have a TikTok presence just to hold it. I get that to an extent, but where do you draw the line? With all the different social media platforms out there, where do you draw the line? Number three, monitor domains. They should not only be watching and monitoring the domains they own, but also their domain ecosystem. This means understanding the types of domains that are being registered around them because it is a multi-dimensional cyber threat. Registered around them. Okay. I'm not in the first read of this. I'm not totally getting this. It ends with the line of it is crucial for companies to understand how their brands are operating on the internet. I'm not really sure what they mean by domains around them. I guess it's just basically understanding what you're using the internet for to promote your brand. Number four, leverage intel threat. Organizations should leverage the threat intel to help them with the adjacent domains and also the tricky tactics, techniques, and procedures used by bad actors in their impersonation attacks rather. So yeah, threat intel. I know that there's specific products out there that can monitor your social media sites as well. I guess that would be part of that. Number five, consider full cycle brand protection, which is not just for their detection capabilities, but also for their expertise in mitigation. I think this is just what I was talking about for full cycle brand protection. Yeah, that's what it appears like. Number six, use incident responders judiciously. Incident responders hate handling the mitigation of brand impersonation because it is a different skill set than a lot of analysts who get into the field for fun investigative work and to not chase down registers to takedowns. I guess what they're saying here is that make sure that your IR responders you're using in a cost-effective way to make sure that they're focused on the problem at hand. In this case, they're talking about branding. Number seven, proactively build law enforcement relationships. This is standard across for everything. If you haven't proactively built a relationship with, say, the FBI or U.S. Secret Services service, rather, you should do that. You should know the folks responsible in your locale. Number eight is sort of across the board the same too. Educate consumers and employees. Number nine is differentiate your brand. So, yeah, it would be very difficult for someone to create a brand called Coca-Cola or something very similar to it, because the Coca-Cola, for example, as one example, is such a differentiated brand. It's so well known. It's so got such a large market. It's very distinctive. And so ways that you can do that, different types of logo design and so forth. But long story short, it's important because the bad guys will try to impersonate businesses using brand impersonation in order to basically do what they do best, and that is exfiltrate information and money from unsuspecting people and businesses to the point where it can't be recovered and it cause serious damage. And that's it for today. Of course, tomorrow we have our normal interview every Tuesdays, and then Thursday we do the throwback, where we take a episode interview from a few months back and replay that for those who are new to listening and watching this podcast. And then Friday I'll be back with the wrap up, which I'll do pretty much the same thing I did today. So until then, stay secure.